The tank destroyer we have on today's video is one of my favourite tank destroyers in World of Tanks, and it is of course the Foch 155, which is part of the on-track operation that's currently within the game, and as of today is probably the final day of this operation. But it is one of my favourite tank destroyers because of the fact that you can clip pretty much every single tank in the game from full health to zero, because of the fact that it has 2,400 alpha damage in its clip potential and 2,310 alpha damage on the 155mm main armament that we have with this vehicle. And there will be two replays in today's video, and they will be live, so we will be playing currently, as you may or may not be able to see my controller within this replay video. So either way, we have the equipment that we're using is advanced optics, advanced concealment, and also ventilation. This is a more camo and stealthy build because ultimately you don't want to get spotted in the Foch because you will get pumped. So without further ado, let's jump into some gameplay because ultimately that's what you're here for, and hopefully we can showcase that the 120mm is a good gun and the 155mm is an okay gun, but probably some of the differences between the two, which one you probably want to pick if you're going to pick either. And yeah, hopefully you guys do enjoy the video. But other than that, we are jumping into Vineyards, which appears to be the first map. Now, this could go one of two ways. If it's a terrible game, then you're going to see it, and if it's a good game, then you're also going to see it. So whatever happens, this is going to be what the video is going to be about, because we're trying to keep it more realistic, I think, now on the channel. You know, I could play maybe 10 games and showcase two of them where I do 6,000 damage plus 7,000 damage, you know, maybe more with the combined damage in there as well. But you know, are they realistic games? And for the majority of players, they might not be. So either way, let's jump in. We're going to load some APCR off the start, which I highly recommend doing with a tank like the Foch, because you want to guarantee at the beginning of the game that you can deal some damage. Now, the spawns are slightly different on this map of Vineyards because the enemy team spawn over in the northeastern side of the map, and our team, the friendlies, spawn over in the south western side of the map. Now, pushing up to this position is potentially risky, and I mean, I think I'm actually going to fall back because there's no point, because for some reason the entire team are going in the opposite direction. So we'll make a little hasty retreat straight away and decide not to try and take on a flank on my own, especially with probably a few people over in their area over there, as well as probably people going to push into the corner. So the only reason I'm really moving back is not because I'm scared of the fact that, you know, you might come up against multiple tanks, because with some assistance, or at least what you'd hope to be assistance, you'd be able to deal a bit of damage towards them from your teammates that are going to be sat on this hill. But it's the crossfire that is going to be caused if they go into the dip on the left hand side, so we want to be careful of that when deciding what we want to do. But from here, we'll just sit back and relax, and hopefully someone will make the mistake of getting spotted. And talking about making the mistake of getting spotted, we launch one round into the Object 268 version 5, and you could see how quickly you could smash out a few rounds with this tank, and that's really what you want with the Foch, is to be a pretty aggressive kind of tank destroyer when you are reloaded, and then play super passively when you're reloading your vehicle, because if you play super aggressively all of the time, you won't usually do anywhere near as good, because it's that time in between your reload where you will end up finding yourself in a bit of a sticky situation. And so yeah, you've got to be a little bit careful. Now you can see the IS-7 is pushing up, which is definitely a good play for him to do, maybe not so much as to expose the actual plates of his vehicle, but either way he's got away with it in terms of us. Now then, you could see the tank is very, very good if you can secure pens on every single tank that you're hitting, but the problem is securing pens on every single tank that you hit, and that's where kind of knowledge, expertise on the actual game and typical crossing points and places where you should be hitting vehicles. You should always go for the tracks if possible to track and deal damage to an opponent. You can see here the 268 version 5 on the enemy team sticking in one spot, and that's where you can retrack opponents. You can also pull back and be a little bit of a nuisance in terms of kind of pulling back, angling your armor even more, especially if you're on a hill area and that sort of thing, and that's really where you can pull out some extra damage. Now we do get spotted here, the IS-7's poking out. We don't really want to take too many more hits, since we don't really know what's at the back, and with the 268 version 5s, they can be a bit of a nightmare. So we're going to pull back. We did take one, which was kind of a bit annoying. They hit right on the weak point, so that highlights the weak point of the foch from the front, that big horned cupola. I'll take a long reload here now, 30 seconds in fact, to deal the damage, well, to be fully reloaded, of course, with the 2400 clip potential. So we'll go up into this position. Now this position is a bit of a risky one, since you can see our teammate here in the E75 or E100 or something by the looks of it did come up here. Not entirely sure what it is, but yeah, we can come into here. Now you can get hit from this side as well as in front, so this is a risky position, like I say, because you can get hit from over there. But if you get into this and the enemy team do indeed get spotted, then we can come away with a decent chunk of health, or at least that's what I'm hoping to come away with. Now you can see here that the enemy team are probably not really expecting us to be in a position like this, and this is the perfect, and I mean perfect, opportunity for the foch 155, because you can retrack opponents, we can deal damage, we can spread the damage, we can go all sorts of places. And that's what you want. You want to have the flexibility to shoot multiple opponents, because that's, if one opponent becomes non-possible to hit, then you can shoot at another one and spread the damage if possible. For usual cases, you want to be hitting one opponent if you can, because then you can target one and then you can deal with them and then push forward and do whatever you want with someone else after you've taken that one tank out, because that's one tank out of the game. But if you are in this sort of position, then you can just farm, and you can see here a nice shot onto the bar. He's now realizing, oh balls, I've been caught out, and that's what the foch can do. 3 rounds into him, 1200 damage done, and of course from this position we can now get a shot into the 780. Now I know that the object 268s are going to be looking my way, so I'm going to over angle. We do take 1 hit in return, but now we can fully reload, and with the STB over on the other side we angle towards them. So this is stuff that is probably not that common in terms of like knowing about, but you know, if you know your positions, you can angle your armor to the best for everyone. So you saw me angling towards the STB, I knew that there would probably be someone over there, so rather than going this direction to over angle and pulling back, then going over here is going to just be much better. So what can we do from here? Well, we can push over this tree, gives us a little bit of camo. Now I don't know how good the camo is, because World of Tanks camo is just trash 90% of the time, but what we can do is we can then pull back behind this bush, as well as being behind these kind of tree lines as well, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, we can finish off one of the 268s. So that's the kind of one-shot ability of the enemy team to go, as well as now we can potentially hit the FV, or the T95, whatever you want to call it, the Valor essentially. So we're just now waiting for this tank destroyer to get spotted. Don't know where he's going to be, don't know what he's going to be doing, but yeah, maybe we'll be able to get a nice shot on the side of the IS-7. It's worth actually going for, since if we do actually hit it, we can get him out of the game. Now I don't want to get spotted by the 780, so I'm going to pull back. We've now got 6 shells in the magazine ready to load in the actual kind of clip that we're reloading, which is good. And now we can decide, you know what, I'm actually going to move down into this position over here, and then what we can do is from here we can hopefully, fingers crossed, deal with some of the other tanks. Now we know that there is still that object 268 that sat somewhere, but at this point I'm ready to risk the fact of maybe being hit by him for the sake of some extra damage, because having done 4,900 damage, you'd probably want to get a little bit more if possible. And of course the object 268's actually moved back, and now maybe we can get a shell off into the 780, which we do. We get another one off, and this is where the power of the foch 155 comes into effect, because you can take out multiple opponents at the end of the game in just one clip, which is always fun. And of course it's not that likely usually, because people aren't always terrible, so you have to be aware that, you know, in these sorts of positions you can get taken out. But hopefully this 268 does indeed fire, but what we can do now is come down onto the IS-7 and we can get him into a nice little position, take him out. We do get hit by the STB-1, which is the final tank on the enemy team. Hopefully he doesn't high roll us if he does decide to actually poke again. But yeah, maybe we'll be able to get one more shell before the game ends and pick up a nice 6k damage result. So it's a good game so far, you know. I would be very, very happy with how this game has turned out. Certainly not a bad one at all, and so now it's just a case of waiting for the STB to be taken out. So you could see there a really nice result in the foch 155 with the 120mm. It's weird naming convention. Either way, it is the foch 120mm. So 5,859 damage done, decent amount of assistance as well in terms of getting some extra if you want to go up on your marks of excellence. We're currently at 1 mark because of the fact we decided to use the 155mm with full HE because brilliant idea, but yeah, it wasn't a good idea, but yeah, either way a good result. And so let's have a look at what the 155mm damage gun actually has. So you can see here straight away an extra 370 damage per shell, slightly worse accuracy, very much worse rate of fire. So you lose a ton of your damage per minute, and in fact our current damage per minute is just under 3,600. If we apply the 15cm, it goes down to 2,800. So you lose a ton, as well as the fact you get less accuracy and you have a 5-second intraclick reload, which is significantly worse than the 120mm, which only has a 2-second intraclick reload. So that is massive. It is huge in terms of being able to get retracking damage and constantly being able to fire at an opponent. With the 155, you kind of have to get lucky that an opponent is out in an open field, whereas with the 120 you can lock people down with the tracking mechanics that you have within World of Tanks and come away with a victory. But we'll have one game in the 155. I have no idea if it's going to be a good one. We've got a decent amount of heat rounds, we've got a decent amount of standard rounds, and I would even argue that sometimes it's worth having a HE clip with the foch 155 because of the fact that sometimes you meet up against tanks like heavies that are super annoying on a corner that no one's going to be able to pen, not even your heat rounds. And that way you can get some consistent damage against them, and that's something I would maybe recommend for some people to use, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend actually just loading them straight away. Now we are going to load, as we did win the previous game, the heat rounds, because we don't want to actually be bouncing with this, since the damage per minute will go through the floor if you do actually decide to miss or bounce or whatever. With the standard rounds, the heat rounds are also kind of good for just penning basically everything. They have 395mm of penetration, which, if you know anything about the penetration values in the game, is unbelievable. So you can basically go through the front of an IS-7 turret if you hit the cheeks area right next to the mantlet. So that's always something you can bear in mind. You can also basically pen the front of every tank basically through the upper plate of most vehicles. So, you know, balanced heat rounds coming into effect, and of course they are premium rounds, so you have to pay for them. So yeah, probably not everyone's favourite, but it is a feature of the game, and when you have the credits that I do, although at the moment probably a lot less than I would hope, then yeah, we don't really have a problem with firing a few premium rounds every now and again. But either way, we'll jump into the left hand side. You can often catch people that are crossing or doing annoying things. Now the light tanks are doing a good job on the enemy team, that is, because they're constantly lighting us up, and if I crest this ridge, it's going to be a pain in the arse. But there's someone over on the left hand side, so we want to be able to kind of be ready for when they get spotted, because we may be able to get 2 shots off. Not entirely sure, but maybe. So we'll sit on this corner and maybe the light tank will crest or do something. He does indeed actually push. Now it appears to be a medium. Now the Lynx does take our hit, which is lovely because he crossed. Good thing about doing is free aiming sometimes, because you can do things like that, which if you always aim down the scope would be 10 times harder to actually hit. So that's stuff you can take into account if you're playing things like this. Now there does appear to be a Carnarvon who for some reason is coming outside on, no idea, but hopefully the Valor holds up on the armour, maybe takes the hit from the medium potentially, which is at the back, and then we can maybe get some damage on the Carnarvon. Now the Carnarvon's turret is going to be an easy pen for us, so from the front the Carnarvon's not going to be having fun, so we'll just get into this position, deal a shot of damage, and now he's basically a goner. So back up and then reload, since we want to make sure we've got a full clip, and I don't want to poke into something I'm never going to be able to spot. So 1600 damage, not bad, but you can see where I'm saying with the accuracy and the intricate reload making it difficult for you to consistently deal damage against some opponents within the game. So it's one of those things that I find can be very, very frustrating using the 15cm, especially if you miss a shell, because then you're like kind of not able to have the consistency that the 120 has, and when you are coming to the top end of your marks of excellence, for example, you want to be super consistent, because it then becomes upon you being good as opposed to the tank kind of trolling you and maybe making you miss or something like that, which you don't want to have when you're trying to be consistent. So yeah, that's the problem. Now the team our team have just crumpled into nothingness, unfortunately, but we do have a fair few tier 10s that could support us. Now I'm going to get into this position over here, because what we want to do is get some gun depression and take out whatever we can. Now the Vanguard is a super annoying tank to be able to reliably hit, and you can see here we raise up the the main armament to try and avoid getting hit. Now I don't know if the Vanguard's just going to constantly spot us here, which he might do. It's good play by him. It's going to be really annoying to take him out, and hopefully one of our teammates can, but at this point we've just got to try and spot someone and try and get some clips off before the game ends. And with the T32 now pushing up, maybe we'll be able to get a shell in, but it's unlikely at this point, and it's probably looking more like we're going to actually have to take out one of these tanks as they come over, and maybe we'll have to kind of YOLO a shot on the T32, which we do. We take him out and try and get back down. We could potentially go for a reload, but I don't think it's going to be worth it, because we're not going to reload, I don't think, by the time the game ends. We've got Pantera that we might be able to take out in a second, but I have no idea. Of course, you can see the problems with this tank over something else is that, yeah, you don't have the consistency that you have with some of the other tanks in the game. But you can do things like this, which is 2-shot a Pantera, which is always fun. And he's now out of the game. The Gorilla's looking at us, so we want to get down. We've now got a 50B or a 30B who's coming around, and this is going to be curtains. There's no way we're going to be able to out-reload, and with the 30B being a bit of a nuisance, yeah, there's nothing we can do. So it's very dependent using the 155mm on the team that you have, which in World of Tanks, if you're relying on your team to not be rubbish to the point where you can reload multiple times in a game and deal your damage, you're going to be disappointed more often than not. So that's why I find the 155 super annoying, super boring, and also the fact that the accuracy and intricate reload are terrible, meaning that, well, the accuracy is not awful, but the aim time is terrible, and also the accuracy is slightly worse, as well as having, yeah, the intricate reload of 5 seconds just ruins the foch 155mm as opposed to the 120mm. But hopefully that has showcased the foch, and hopefully it was a good video for you guys to get to grips with. Of course, showcasing the equipment loadout, the consumables, how we'd run it, and with the commander that we've got, basically going with the camo perks and any other ones that are going to benefit it. They're not optimized 100% because we do have the turret traverse one, so snapshot or whatever it is, which of course we don't have a turret in. But yeah, the foch 155, a brilliant tank destroyer, but only with the 120mm, or unless you want to have some good fun using HE rounds, which have 1100 alpha, and of course 3 of them, which could deal, what, 3300 damage. Yeah, I mean, it's potentially fun. But yeah, other than that, hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, please hit that like button, and if you want to see us actually firing HE in the foch 155, then check out the video here. You can't see my finger, but it is on the left hand side of the screen, which showcases the stream that we used, so you might have to skip through to find it, but also on the left hand side, or the right hand side even now, God, I'm confusing myself. But yeah, on the right hand side of the screen there'll be the gameplays and tank reviews playlist where we have showcased the Foch before, so you can trawl back like a year ago where we actually played this thing. But other than that, hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and of course a happy new year if you have indeed come into the new 2023. But other than that, I hope you did enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one, at least hopefully.